Ownership, a simple word and yet the foundation of everything we thought we had. Do you really own the games you buy, or did you ever? When we talk about true ownership in gaming, the go-to argument is always physical media. In the early 2000s and earlier, that was the gold standard. It was cut and dry, transparent, something you could hold, tangible. No servers, no digital platforms or accounts, just plug and play. As a certain developer once said, it just works. Now obviously, that applies mostly to offline single-player games. Online and multiplayer titles were a different beast, but even then, many of them gave you options. Games like Battlefield 2 from 2005 let players host their own servers, and while the official servers from GameSpy are long gone, the game isn't. To this day, fans still keep it alive, along with many other games. Art that is preserved, playable, permanent. The only real legal limit was the license agreement, the fine print saying you couldn't copy or distribute the game due to obvious copyright law, but you could lend it, sell it, or keep it forever. However, physical copies had one major issue: distribution. Piracy was rampant in the late 90s and early 2000s, not just in games, but in movies and music too. For publishers and devs, it was a nightmare. Revenue wasn't just leaking through piracy, it was bleeding through secondhand sales, and while the concern was understandable, after all, these were businesses, the true impact and reason was far more nuanced. But publishers didn't care. What followed wasn't just a solution, it was the beginning of something far more calculated. These same publishers grew more powerful, more corporate, and far more aggressive, with access to lobbying power and a political system that was too slow, too unfamiliar, or too uninterested in this rapidly evolving industry. Publishers were left unchecked. And as technology exploded forward faster than the law could keep up with, the stage was set. Control and unaccountability became the norm. Dating back to the 80s and 90s, publishers had tried everything to deter piracy, but one method would soon become the standard in PC gaming: CD keys. Simple to use, easy to implement. Especially effective during the CD-ROM days, where installation would often require the valid key and a working disk. Together, serial keys and disk checks formed a basic local form of DRM. The game verified itself on your machine, no internet required. But like all security measures, it had its flaws. Keygens, no CD cracks, it was all just a simple search away. Still, physical media offered something priceless, a tangible sense of ownership. But did we truly own it? Not exactly. A physical copy of a game free from online DRM or platform dependency was akin to owning a book. You owned the physical object, the disc or the pages, but not the actual code or the book's words. However, in the case of the game, it's governed by a license and a user agreement, even if it's physical. But it was yours to keep forever, as long as the disc remained intact and compatible hardware was available. Like everything, it had its cons, but then the internet took over. Local checks started being replaced by more aggressive security systems. Online checks, digital storefronts replaced retail shelves, and the first to feel it, PC gamers. Steam. The start of a solution to the age-old problem of convenience and distribution.
One of the things that the internet represents is an enormous broadening of distribution channels. You're seeing the same thing in television, you're seeing the same thing in news. And to us, that's one of the most exciting things about Steam and this transition that Steam is part of.
This digital revolution allowed PC gaming and indie titles to explode around the world. The features, the sales, Steam became a platform that works incredibly well. Rapidly growing too in users, actual sales, putting any other tech company to shame when it comes to profit per head. And for more than a decade, PC gamers have built digital libraries that feel safe. And with its rise came the reduction of piracy on PC, leading to one of Gabe Newell's most iconic quotes. The easiest way to stop piracy is not by putting anti-piracy technology to work, It's by giving those people a service that's better than what they were receiving from the pirates.
And as soon as the product became available at the same time that it was available in Australia or the UK or the United States, and it was localized in Russia, all of a sudden our piracy problems in Russia disappeared. People are happy to pay money if they're getting what they perceive as a great product delivered on their terms.
Piracy wasn't just about getting games for free, it was about ease. Download, crack it, play it. Easy storage, no discs, and God forbid, no leaving the house. Steam removed that friction. It gave users something piracy and physical games couldn't: a one-click library, cloud saves, automatic updates, ease of multiplayer. They simply built the better service, much like Spotify did with music. But Steam was a double-edged sword, because with every convenience came a compromise. The shift to digital brought long-term questions about ownership, about permanence. When Steam first launched in 2003 alongside Counter-Strike, it raised eyebrows, but it was Half-Life 2 that really triggered the conversation. Even if you bought a physical copy, you couldn't just install, put your key and play. You had to register your key to a Steam account. It had to be validated online, not just to a server, but to your library. Bound to it. Forever. For the first time, your purchase wasn't really yours. It lived inside a platform, a single account, on a system you didn't control. And during a time when the internet wasn't yet everywhere and trust in digital services was low, it caused a backlash. Digital ownership isn't true ownership, was a common criticism. And while both models were based on licenses, Steam and every platform that followed, you were more specifically buying a revocable, non-transferable license, tied to that account. A license that could be taken away by the platform, or worse, the publisher. Far easier to enforce in the digital world, such as removing or banning. Clearly stated in their EULA, like Blizzard or Ubisoft. Holding the right to terminate, discontinue or support the product at any time, for any reason. Even extending to demanding for you to destroy all copies of the product in your possession, like some evil cartoon villain. A flip of a switch and something that we bought will be gone forever. This would soon become a gray area that publishers could act on and change at will. And to the average consumer, this was never clearly explained. Trading or reselling your digital games became impossible, and while courts in Europe debated whether digital goods should have the same consumer rights as physical ones, in particular to resell, nothing ever came of it. In fact, it wasn't until 2024, after mounting legal pressure in California, that Steam even began stating it clearly: a purchase of a digital product grants a license for the product on Steam. GOG, known for its no DRM policy, took the opportunity to post its own disclaimer. A purchase of a digital product on GOG grants you its offline installers, which cannot be taken away from you. It was quite the flex, a rare example of a digital storefront offering something that resembled physical games. Still a license, but fully independent from the platform itself once you actually had the files, while preserving old games to run on newer machines, something that would not be feasible with physical media. But that brings us to the real issue, the one that cuts through both physical and digital games. Always-On DRM. Initially, Steam was often criticized for being fancy DRM in disguise, which was true, but it is pretty light, comparable to CD verifications. But with new storefronts like Origin or Games for Windows Live,
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Each came with their own form of DRM, their own rules, their own risks. And on top of that, for years, the industry had been using the infamous SecuROM, StarForce, and StarDoc DRM. DRM that felt less like protection and more like punishment, introducing the digital death of original physical copies. Red Faction Guerrilla from 2009, for an example, while trying to play legitimately with a physical copy, won't run since the copy protection checks and Games for Windows Live no longer exists.
This game also has digital copy protection from StarDoc. However, unlike the other games we have looked at, Red Faction Guerrilla's copy protection no longer works. This copy protection, also known more recently as DRM, was designed around a central authentication server. These servers no longer exist.
And it got worse. In 2007, BioShock launched with one of the most infamous DRM setups ever: online verification, limited installs. After 2 installations, you had to call customer support to ask for more. Then came Mass Effect, reactivations every 10 days, install limits. And again, all for a single-player game. This wasn't ownership of a license. It was a license on a leash. Securom and Starforce both eventually triggered lawsuits against Ubisoft and EA. The 2008 Spore lawsuit, another game that used Securom, accused EA of violating consumer rights by secretly installing it, imposing install limits, online activation, and buried itself deep within the system registry. Couldn't be easily uninstalled, and in some cases remained on your PC even after deleting the game. Bad enough that modern versions of Windows block it entirely. Starforce was arguably even worse, notorious for causing boot failures and in rare cases, breaking entire PCs. Both lawsuits were ultimately dismissed for lack of evidence. EA and Ubisoft walked away untouched. And while these copy protections were eventually phased out, the damage was done. Old physical copies, still tied to defunct DRM and platforms, became useless unless you cracked them, relied on community patches, or rebought the game digitally elsewhere. Games that people still own killed. One of the most egregious examples of anti-consumer practices this industry has ever seen. Ironically, Spore went on to become the most pirated game in the world.
This is an example where a lot of the copy protection schemes go in exactly the wrong direction. They're actually negative service, right? I want my content on any device at any point in time with a lot of security, right? I don't want to have to worry when I buy a new PC that I won't be able to play a game that I've paid for. So if you solve the real problem, which is, hey, I can go over to my friend's house and play the game. I can be in a cyber cafe on vacation on holiday and I can play my game, and I can buy new PCs and never have to worry about backing this up or restoring backups or anything like that. Oh, that's great. Then I'm much less likely to get a pirated version.
And you know the craziest part? Just 1 year later, they made it even worse. With Assassin's Creed 2, they introduced an always-online DRM, requiring constant internet access on Ubisoft's new platform, Uplay, for a single-player game. That's right, lose connection, doesn't matter if it was your fault or theirs, you would get booted, progress wiped. Mid-mission? Too bad. Backlash was immediate. Ubisoft eventually scaled it down, then removed it after years, but the message was clear. They weren't selling you products anymore, they were selling you access. Access that punished the honest consumer, while pirates just cracked it and moved on. Then came the final boss, Denuvo. The most effective DRM to date, protecting a game's first months from piracy. But it came at a cost. Performance hits, background processes, and of course, online verification. On the bright side, most games remove it a year or two after launch. Preservation, at least partially through platforms like Steam or optimally GOG, was still possible.
So now,
we're about to change entertainment forever.
Again.
Because we're going to take all that we learned
in more than 30 years of innovation
and use it to change everything.
For the first time, you and your TV are going to have a relationship.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Xbox on.
The Xbox One reveal. For the longest time, consoles had dodged the worst of it. No mandatory accounts, no always-online DRM, no storefront lock-ins. Sure, digital was creeping in during the 7th generation, and it was okay. An option, and bringing much of the benefits of Steam to consoles. But then Microsoft showed up with the brilliant idea of launching an always-online console. No used games, daily check-ins, no offline mode. Your physical discs treated like digital licenses, all tied to Microsoft servers, and when support ended, you guessed it. Even the messaging was arrogant. Xbox creative director Adam Orth famously told players to #deal with it, or Xbox chief Don Matrick.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. So stick with 360, that's your message if you don't like it?
If you have zero access to the internet, that is an offline device.
You serious?
And it wasn't completely unexpected. This was the company that had orchestrated the notorious Games for Windows Live, was heavily pushing TV features for whatever reason.
TV, MTV, TV. Xbox, go home.
And people had enough. Pushback was massive, PlayStation played jokes, and was effective. The policies were walked back. But the industry never stopped trying. More recently, with the Switch 2, Nintendo added a clause in their EULA that gives them the power to remotely break your console or account if they believe you bypassed protections or modified your system. So vague, it could apply to legit repair, leading to a potential lawsuit in Brazil infringing on consumer rights of access, calling it abusive. Even many so-called physical games, especially post the 7th generation, began to mirror the PC model. Boxes with download codes, discs that trigger downloads from a server, games connected to accounts and platforms that won't be around forever. And we have cases of stores like the 3DS store that closed down and those digital games gone forever. And now Xbox is pushing for an all-digital future, with rumors of disk drives disappearing entirely. And the PlayStation is not that far behind with a PlayStation Pro, pushing for all digital. Now, to be clear, the problem isn't digital distribution itself, but what are the guarantees? If everything is connected to accounts and servers that can easily remove access with no repercussions or fallback option. We've seen what happened with online DRM, killed games. But that's exactly what they wanted, to turn games into a service. If buying isn't owning, piracy isn't stealing, became the rough equivalence gamers fought with. But something had shifted. The balance of trust between publishers and consumers was beginning to crack. As the industry evolved, as the games got bigger, more expensive, more complex, and more reliant on online infrastructure, that balance shattered completely. For the longest time, buying games was a simple premise. You paid full price and got the full product. But as online functionality became the norm and free-to-play games exploded in the early 2010s, everything started to change. League of Legends, Team Fortress, even mobile games. The industry saw the goldmine revenue potential of microtransactions and DLC. In the world of AAA and now quadruple A titles, it became the foundation. Entire games became storefronts. We started calling them live service games, games as a service, or games with live service elements. And just like that, the gold rush began. But the truth is, we've had live games for decades. RuneScape, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, the original subscription-based MMOs, not the version of today, extra monetized, where you paid monthly for continuous updates and accepted that one day, those servers would go dark. And even when they did, Star Wars Galaxies, City of Heroes, WildStar, communities brought them back, sometimes with publisher support, sometimes without. WoW Classic, old school RuneScape. Games preserved, reborn, and loved again. The rules were clear, the risks transparent. But in the modern era, live service stopped being a unique form of a game with a perpetual world. It became a strategy, a monetization model disguised as a design philosophy. Buying access to a glorified storefront, a service, a platform engineered from the ground up to sell you more. Battle passes and seasonal-based gameplay keeping players on hamster wheels. Cosmetics, artificial grind. Engage, retain, monetize. And worse, these systems weren't bolted on after development. They dictated development, all to follow in the massive gold mines of free-to-play live games like Fortnite and League of Legends. Because when monetization drives development, it's no longer built for fun, it's built for profit. When the servers were live, sure it works, but once the servers go dark, the game, the content, your purchases, gone. Between 2023 and 2024, Ubisoft shut down the crew after a decade of support. A racing game with millions of players, gone. Anthem, 6-7 years, gone too. That was the expiration date, hidden from consumers. Planned obsolescence. The game was discontinued, just like a book going out of print, except this time, every existing copy in the world suddenly became unreadable. A lawsuit followed, and Ubisoft's defense, they claimed there was no deception because you never actually owned the product. You purchased a license, a revocable one they could take away at any time for any reason. Remember the EULA? Because in truth, this wasn't a glitch in the system. This was the system, the natural conclusion of an industry that had spent decades slowly boiling the frog through online DRM, always-on checks, and quiet anti-consumer erosion. Unlike the intrusive online DRM, which can often be stripped away with ease, leaving the game fully playable, these games required extra work due to their server-side dependencies, but it's not impossible, as an offline mode was supposedly in the game files. Suicide Squad, for an example, added an offline mode, preserving its access as its live elements came to a conclusion. But it was Ubisoft's decision, that cold, deliberate shutdown, that helped spark something bigger. StopKillingGames, led by Accursed Farms, or as most know him, Ross. A decade-old battle.
And they are going to kill this game. I consider it a gaming tragedy to make something with so much effort and content behind it, only to intentionally kill it so no one will ever play it again. And now it's just a matter of time.
A campaign asking EU lawmakers to intervene, demanding publishers to stop deleting what we paid for.
It's a form of planned obsolescence, where publishers are destroying games they've already sold to you, but keeping your money. And this is all preventable. This would require publishers to leave games they have sold to customers in a working state at the time of shutdown, without requiring any further connection to them or affiliated parties for the games to function. How they would do this would be up to them. This would also apply to free-to-play games that contain microtransactions.
But not everyone agreed. Pirate Software, Thor, content creator and game developer, pushed back against the movement, misrepresenting it completely. But almost a year later, and through various other dramas...
Do you see my mana? What am I supposed to do for you?
Just kill the Mastiffs.
Oh, okay, there's a lot of ego in that comment, which is also just bollocks.
It came back to bite, and as it turns out, all we needed was a villain.
It needs to be specific about the business practice it's trying to defeat, which is specifically companies that are doing this under the guise of it being a single-player game, but adding online-only functionality that is not necessary and doesn't add any gameplay elements. That's the problem.
No, that's not it at all.
And there are some people that'll say, well, just make it all single-player.
Like
well,
you?
I've explained that doesn't make any sense in the first place. If you're making it all single-player, you'd have to carve off all of that, and it's developer time and money. These are two different ideologies, and that's okay to have two different ideologies. I just won't agree with it.
But those aren't the ideologies. Nothing in the initiative is asking to convert games to single player.
The outrage drew attention. The message became clear and more accessible to the average audiences. Massive creators spoke up. Gamers from every community took notice, uniting under a rare shared sentiment. Even as Pirate Software bitterly stated he hoped the initiative would provide nothing players wanted as it crossed the 1 million signatures.
I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted.
However, Pirate wasn't alone. An industry lobbying group, Video Games Europe, packed with names of all of our favorite publishers like EA, WB, Activision, Microsoft, and executives like Kerry Hopkins from EA that back in 2019 told the UK Parliament that loot boxes aren't gambling, but surprise mechanics. Just to give you an idea of who we are dealing with. They came out with a nearly identical take. Quote, The decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable, which ironically was never what the initiative asked for.
We are in no way seeking to impede your right to discontinue online services. We are saying you can shut down your games whenever you want. But you have to do that responsibly, in a way that doesn't take back rights you already sold to customers.
But there's a glimmer of hope. Ubisoft has reportedly been testing offline modes for crew titles, a direct response to this movement. A small step, but hopefully the first of many. Now sure, it's normal for games to be discontinued. Battlefield 2, my earlier example, is effectively abandonware. It's not sold anywhere, not supported on any modern platform, its life preserved solely by the community. And it's not alone. According to the Video Game History Foundation, 87% of classic games are completely unavailable. But with digital, there's no excuse. Platforms like GOG have already proven that. No DRM, no expiration dates. You can store the files and play them forever, just like a disc, even if the store shuts down tomorrow. Always online DRM, live service models, dead platforms, none of it is inevitable. There are solutions, ways to protect the time, money, and memories that players poured into these games. So yes, Stop Killing Games was and is a powerful movement. One that even Vice President of the European Parliament, Nikolai, has said, quote, "I stand with the people who started this citizen initiative. I signed and will continue to help them. A game, once sold, belongs to the customer, not the company." But it's just the beginning, because the industry, it isn't slowing down. The laws, they will always lag behind. And the publishers, they are only getting bolder. Which leaves one final question. What will be the final frontier? You will own nothing and be happy. A phrase that once sounded like a dystopian satire, now it's starting to feel like a corporate mission statement. Outside of the known giants and the few, like Helldivers 2, that did it right, the live service gold rush is collapsing. Budgets are ballooning, risks are shrinking, and in the middle of this chaos lies a gamble. A new strategy is emerging: subscriptions. And they are not even hiding it anymore. Ubisoft's Philippe Tremblay proudly paraphrased the future. Players need to get comfortable not owning their games. A warning that games should not be owned, but services you access. In that same interview, they outlined the next step. I don't have a crystal ball, but when you look at the different subscription services that are out there, we've had a rapid expansion over the last couple of years. We are seeing expansion on console as the likes of PlayStation and Xbox bring new people in. On PC, from a Ubisoft standpoint, it's already been great, but we are looking to reach out more on PC, so we see an opportunity there. Because to them, it's perfect. Recurring revenue, full control. And if something disappears tomorrow, too bad, it was never yours. And that happens quite frequently with these services. Licenses and contracts end, and the game's gone. Now, to be clear, for now, subscriptions like Game Pass are a great value and a convenient option for a great deal of gamers that can't afford full-price games, or games that you don't really care to own. Games we never would have bought or played, discovered for a fraction of the price. $12 or $20 a month, hundreds of games. No need to drop the $70 or $80. Just pick, play, and move on. Seems perfect, or is it really? Look at Outer Worlds 2, launching at $80, and the immediate push from many online to just get it on Game Pass instead. A win for the consumer, or a very convenient win for Xbox, hoping to lock you into their ecosystem. Game Pass, Ubisoft Plus, EA Play, PlayStation Plus, at a glance, they mirror the old-school rental system. However, there's been many concerns that will require its own deep dive, such as the cannibalization of sales, sustainability, the impact on indies, developers' shared revenue, and the impact on game development. Will games' design change because of it, like live service games did? But there's also a quiet truth. As these services gain more market share, as consumers find more convenience and affordability on subscriptions, as game prices increase, they will be forced into a platform that they have no control over, no ownership, and pay perpetually for access. Especially for multiplayer live games with extra monetization like Call of Duty. Particularly bleak. It's almost as if it's live service games on steroids. And what's even worse is that the future, it's already been written. The Netflixification of gaming. Netflix was once the dream. Then came price hikes, fragmentation, resolution paywalls, ads on the cheapest tiers. What started as an alternative to cable became cable again. And when the service becomes worse, we go back to the good old Gabe Newell quote, and piracy rises. And Game Pass? It's already headed there. Prices have already gone up and inevitably will go up again, and the future ad-supported tiers. An idea Microsoft already considered internally. What began as value, or as Xbox likes to call it, freedom, slowly erodes into just another trap. And if you think that's far-fetched, we've had 2 instances where technical errors displayed ads on Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty for DLC content. Do you really believe that was just a mere coincidence by 2 companies pushing subscription services, or a test? But worse, imagine a future where you don't even install games, because the ultimate goal isn't just subscriptions, it's streaming, cloud gaming. Stadia may have failed, but the idea hasn't. Game Pass is already offering it, so is Nvidia, so is PlayStation, Amazon, and Ubisoft loves the idea for the future. For me, whenever we publish a game, the first thing I do is stream it and play a couple of minutes. I don't have to download it, I can jump right in. Streaming enables fast discovery. That's the first thing we are seeing from a consumer perspective. A world where you won't need a console or a PC, just a service, a subscription. No downloads, no hardware, no ownership. Just temporary access to a library that can be deleted overnight. You will own nothing and be happy. But not everything is so bleak. In the middle of all the corporate rot, the live service hellscapes and AAA collapses, there's a renaissance. A new wave of independent devs, AA developers, and Eastern studios that just want to make fun, complete games. And gamers, we are choosing them. These games are breaking records, winning awards, not because they are built by committees, but because they respect their creators, and most importantly, they respect you, the consumer, your time, your money, your trust. And in particular, a special thanks to platforms like GOG, preserving games the right way in the digital age, because while Steam is a great platform, that subscriber-user agreement still leaves a lot to be desired. And of course, to Ross Scott for kickstarting the Stop Killing Games movement, for raising awareness and for fighting back against the quiet, preventable erasure of digital and always online games. And with that, thank you for watching.